Okay, so we've been talking about sequelae, we've been talking about etiological causes, we've been talking about that this is a progression. Disengagement does not happen overnight. It's a step by step by step psychological and sociological dis-ease in the corporate world. But one step adds to the next step, adds to the next step. Because nobody starts a job with the idea that they are going to be antagonistic against management. So, you're in management, you're in senior management, you may be the CEO, you may own the company. And if you've ever asked yourself, why doesn't everybody just get on the same page? Why doesn't everyone just get along? Why doesn't everybody just clue in? Well, we've explained in the last 3 videos why they don't clue in, and it has to do with sociological conditioning to dysfunctional psychological mindsets, and the mindsets are disjointed to the point that the us versus them syndrome is entrenched in our corporate culture. And the purpose of this video series is to teach you how to defeat it and how to defeat disengagement. So here's a very important question. If you're in senior management, if you're in any type of management, but especially if you're the CEO, the company owner, ask yourself this: am I a nice guy? Well, the answer should be yes. If I'm a nice guy, then don't I have the best interests of my employees at heart? Well, the answer to that better be yes, because without employees, we can't perform the function of the business, and therefore we can't achieve the purpose of the business, which is what the last video is about, redefining management to understand that it's function and purpose, and function and purpose are not synonymous. But that's okay, we got that from the last video. So why is there this disjointed mindset? Why is it that employees all too often, according to Gallup, 85% of the time, not understand that you're a nice guy or a nice gal, that you have their best interest at heart? And that's because of a lack of knowledge. That's because of a lack of understanding. And that's because of a lack of training. You can't just come up to your employees and say, hey, I'm a nice guy, follow my leadership. They have to understand that you have their best interest at heart, and that should be intuitive. Because remember, it's your hand that hands them their paycheck, that hands them their security, and if they've been with you long enough, that hands you their lifelong pension. So why don't they get this? The reason they don't get this is because of sociological conditioning. We need to defeat the sociological conditioning. And as we suggested in the last video, but let me make this succinct, we defeat the sociological conditioning of the herd mentality by teaching our people how to think as individuals. If we follow the herd mentality, it's groupthink, and groupthink is dangerous. That's what led to communism. If we don't defeat groupthink, then people will always gravitate towards whatever the influence of their peer group expresses. And that is sociological in nature. Your job is to get people to think for themselves. And your job is to help your people, your workforce, decide something individually. And what they need to decide is that, are you, their boss, their friend, or their foe? And this video is going to talk about why so many employees think of management or the boss or the owner as their adversary or their enemy and not as their friend. So employees need to break this disjointed, dysfunctional mindset about complacency, because you have to understand that there is a risk. There's a multiple of risks, but virtually every one of those risks can be defeated by my being engaged on the job to perform the function I'm supposed to be performing for the purpose of my function. Okay, let me explain this. I'm going to give you a practical application. Every employee wants to believe that if they show up for work every day and put in their 8 hours, that they're going to have a job today, next week, next month, next year. In other words, they're always going to receive a regular paycheck every month for as long as they want to work. And then they believe that they're going to receive a pension check every month, even though they're not working. That's the belief system in our socioeconomic society. And we call this financial stability. And employees need to have a sense of financial stability, because let's face it, if they didn't, then they would live in a position of fear and anxiety. And when we're operating out of fear and anxiety, we are not productive. Now, that statement might seem pretty obvious on the surface. I mean, our employees are not going to be as productive. But just because we intuitively know something's true, or it sounds like it's true, is not as important as understanding why it's true. And once again, we need to go to medicine. When we look at the overall health and welfare of a human body, and then we draw a parallel to the health and welfare of your corporate body, we need to understand that holistic medicine is comprised of 4 different components. And those 4 different components are our physical well-being, our mental well-being, our emotional well-being, and our spiritual well-being. Now, the reason that our employees are not going to be as productive as they could be is because of the mental, emotional, and spiritual, and how that's going to affect the physical. So let me explain that. If mentally our employees do not have a sense of financial stability, if emotionally they have a sense of anxiety or fear, then spiritually they're going to lack something, and that's faith in the company. And if they don't have faith, when you lose faith, you lose hope, which means if they lose hope, then they're going to go into one of the other 2 major contributing factors to disengagement, and that's despondency. So we need to ensure that our employees understand that there is a very excellent opportunity that their economic, financial stability is in fact safe. And we're going to show them how to safeguard their own financial and economic security by understanding that they have to, by the same token, ensure the financial and economic stability of the company, because it's an if-then. If they put their energy, emotion, effort, which is what engaged means, if they put their energy, emotion, effort into the financial stability of the company, then the company can put its energy, emotion, effort back into the financial stability of the individual. This is called the law of reciprocity. And yet, this is something that employees don't know, and if they don't know it, then they can't understand it. And this is something that needs to be taught. But most employees are under this delusional belief that all they have to do is show up for work and they'll get paid. So what needs to happen is employees need to understand a absolutely true economic principle. And the economic principle at work is this: anything an employee does that affects the health and welfare of the company affects the health and welfare of the individual. And further, anything that threatens the company's health and welfare threatens the health and welfare of each individual employee. And that's a principle that should be taped on the mirror of every employee's washroom so they can read it and be reminded of it every day before they go to work. But the problem is, employees don't know this principle because they've never heard this principle, because they've never been taught this principle. And when I say hearing it versus being taught, 2 different things, because you can hear it and not understand it. But if you're taught what it means, then you get to grasp it. So not only do employees need to be reminded of this principle every day, they need to understand what it means. And that comes through your corporate training. If you want to change the dysfunctional, disjointed mindset between us and them, you're going to have to engage in training, because this type of thinking is not taught in high schools, and it's not taught by parents, and it's not taught anywhere in the world, which means if it's not taught anywhere, you're going to need to teach it. Otherwise, the financial stability and viability of your company will be threatened. But when you teach this principle, that anything that threatens the health and welfare of the company threatens the individual employee's health and welfare, when you teach this principle, what you're teaching employees is that the role of management is to instruct them, correct them, and yes, when necessary, to reprimand them so that the employee's actions and behavior can get in sync with things that ensure the company's financial viability. In other words, the manager is not trying to be a jerk. When the manager fulfills their role of ensuring the financial viability of the company, they do so by giving employees instruction, correction, and yes, when necessary, reprimands. But that is in the employee's best interest. In other words, when management performs its function, it's actually doing employees a favor. But no employee thinks like this because of that same herd mentality. Employees have a disjointed mindset. When we change the thinking of employees to understand what the function of management is, then employees are going to start to embrace management as their friends, because that's effectively what they are. Their management friends are trying to help them keep their job and ensure their financial stability and their financial security today and for the future. So another part of the function of a manager is to observe things that are dysfunctional, which are going in the wrong direction, and then to provide redirection to employees so employees can get back in line with what they need to do to ensure the company's viability. And here's where the psychology goes deeper. And here's where the psychology starts to mesh with the sociology. Because within our social dynamics at work, when you have a group of people who are not in management, we call this the rank and file, when those people have the herd mentality as something they've embraced, when these people have the us versus them mindset, then this is a syndrome that acts against the function of management. See, if I'm an employee and I think that you as my manager are my enemy, if I've got an adversarial mindset about you, then I don't truly understand what your function is. And your function is to help me improve my performance so that I can stay financially stable. But employees, again, don't understand that. So they embrace the herd mentality. Again, the herd mentality is based on not thinking. Because a herd doesn't think. A herd is groupthink, not individual think. So when we train people, and we train them individually to come to an epiphany, and the epiphany is that the manager is actually their friend, then what happens is employees can start to individually change the direction that they move in. When enough employees do this, then guess what? This now becomes the herd mentality, and this is a good herd mentality to have, because everybody needs to function in a way that protects the viability of your company. But when the herd mentality, sociologically speaking, is against management, us versus them, then what we're going to see is not only does the rank and file employee or workforce as group, not only does a group work against the function of management, it actually works against the purpose of the company, which is to make a profit. Why? To ensure the financial stability of each and every individual member of the herd. And that's what makes Ararat Consulting's medical approach unique. Because what we're doing is we're teaching you how to incorporate the science of sociology and the science of psychology in such a way that when you learn how to diagnose the etiology of what causes disengagement, then you're halfway to curing disengagement. And that's what we're going to show you how to do in the coming videos.